Right guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be going through how to do a dumbbell row, how to get the most out of the exercise. It is one of the most butchered exercises out there when it comes to training your back. In the last few years, I've grown my back from this to this, and in that time I've done my fair share of dumbbell rows. So I'm going to be going through how to do the exercise, the variations, exercise setup, and most of the trains as well. Right, let's go. Okay, so before you go into any exercise, you need to realize what is the goal of the exercise, because this is going to dictate your exercise technique. So when it comes to your dumbbell rows, you have two main variations. You have a lat bias row and an upper back bias row. The main difference is going to be your elbow position, and your ability to perform the exercise is also impacted by the angle of your back, okay? So I'm going to go through the setup for a lat bias row now and for an upper back bias row. So lat bias row, elbow goes towards the back pocket, keeping the back fairly flat. One mistake you'll see people make all the time when it comes to rows, it doesn't really make any sense when you think of how gravity works, is they actually push the dumbbell forward before they do the row, thinking they're putting the lat in more of a stretch. But if the dumbbell's straight down and I move it forward, that isn't actually your back, that's your front delt doing some form of weird front raise. You don't need to move it forward, just let your arm fully straighten out and then go into your next rep. You don't need to front raise the dumbbell. If you can front raise 40 kilos, fair play. So really simply for your rows, elbow position is going to have a massive impact on what muscles you're targeting and what muscles get biased. The more your elbow's by your side, the more lats it is. And as my elbow gets more flared out, the more it trains my upper back. Now that we understand where our elbow angle needs to be, you need to look at the angle of your back. The flatter your back, the easier it is to target your lats, because you're going to do less shrugging. The more vertical your back is, the more it's going to be an upper back exercise, as you're going to get more shrugging, which is going to target more of the upper back. So as you can see here, the more upright I am, the more I naturally shrug. It's harder for me to get that elbow back because my shoulder wants to come a bit more up. So lats is a bit easier to hit when your back's a wee bit flatter. Upper back's a bit easier to hit when you're a bit more upright. One of the main mistakes when it comes to rows is actually to do with your bicep. So what happens a lot is people will row their hand will come towards their shoulder. This turns it in from a back exercise, whether it's lat bias or upper back bias, into a bicep exercise. Regardless if it's lat bias or if it's slightly more upper back bias, what we don't want is to turn it into a bicep exercise. Your elbow will bend during the exercise. Of course it'll bend as you're training your back. But what you don't want to happen is you don't want to feel like your hand's coming towards your shoulder, because you can see there's so much elbow bend here. There's not a wide lot going on here. Whereas when I drive my elbow back and have a bit less bend in the elbow, it's more of a back exercise. Your biceps will be involved, but we don't want to feel like we're curling our hand towards our shoulder, because then our biceps are taking over the lift. The next thing that's going to massively impact your ability to do your dumbbell rows is actually something that you won't really think about, and it's your feet. Where your feet are is going to dictate your range of motion. It's going to dictate actually whether it's an upper back exercise or a lat bias exercise. So you need to make sure that your feet are in the right place, and also that you have a solid enough base so that when you go to row, that you're able to row a heavy enough dumbbell to make the exercise worthwhile. So when it comes to our feet position with rows, we have a couple of options. So first option is split stance. One foot goes forward, planted on the floor, the other foot goes back. If you're doing a lat bias row, your foot's going to want to go back further, as your back's going to want to be a bit flatter. With an upper back row, your foot can be a wee bit closer, because this is going to put you a bit more vertical. Your other alternatives when it comes to your foot position is you can just fire both feet back. You're going to have to put a bit of trust in the bench or the thing that's supporting you. Because if I'm here, I'm going to want to have a bit of trust in this bench. So if you don't have a sturdy bench or you don't trust the bench, don't do that one. The other thing that you'll see people do, and this is complete personal preference, they'll put the bench completely flat. This isn't a bad variation. Personally, I don't really do it. But if you find you can produce a bit more force, that's all well and good. Do this variation. Also, the thing is, if you're going to be training for 20 years, a few variations isn't going to do a bit of harm. Even if it's not the most optimal exercise and the most optimal way to do an exercise, if you're going to be training for 20 years, you're probably going to need to switch it up at some stage. So throwing a bit of variation isn't going to do any harm. As long as you're training hard enough and you're doing a variation which allows you to go to failure and allows you to get stronger, that's 100%. We're here, drive the elbow back. We just want to make sure this foot's firmly planted on the floor and the foot is far enough out of the way to allow you to go through a full range of motion. Hand and knee are firmly planted on the bench. When it comes to your dumbbell rows, one of the biggest mistakes when it comes to your feet is that it impacts your range of motion. If my feet are too close to me and I go to row the dumbbell, I'm not gonna be able to do it properly because my foot's in the way. So get that foot out of the way, go through a full range of motion. It doesn't matter which type of rowing variation you're doing, that foot needs to be out of the way. The third and most common mistake when it comes to dumbbell rows is actually to do with your back itself. Now, we've all saw it in the gym before. Because dumbbell rows you can go heavy, that doesn't mean you should go heavier than you can. Dumbbell rows are often done wrong. And the reason is because they are a great ego exercise. They're probably the heaviest free weight exercise you will do. So people just go and lift the heaviest dumbbell they can in the dumbbell rack, but then inevitably they do it wrong. And there's usually one thing they do wrong when they lift the dumbbells too heavy. So speaking of dumbbells too heavy, I'm gonna grab the 40s. Regardless of what way you set the bench or what variation you're doing for your rows, doesn't matter if it's upper back or lat biased, you don't want to excessively rotate through your back because then we're not actually using the muscles we want to train. We're just using momentum and using our hips. What I don't want to do is open my back up. Like here. If my back starts square to the floor, that's where I want it to end. If I start here, I want the row to here. If I start here, I don't want to be looking at the camera at the top of the rep because the elbow angle is what we're interested in. We're interested in how far our elbow comes back. We're not interested in where our elbow actually ends up in relation to where our body is. Like if I'm here and I go to here and then I twist, my elbow angle is still only this much. Whereas I want to get my elbow back to here. So like if here to here is the same as here to here to there. So just keep your chest square to the ground, get that elbow back, stop excessively rotating. So what I do want is something a bit more like this. And what I don't want is something a bit more like this. You're opening up your body too much. You're using momentum too much. Now that we've went through the exercise variations, the lat bias and the upper back bias rows and the common mistakes, there is one other variation you can try if you get bored of dumbbell rows or if you want a wee bit more support, because obviously you have a bit of support during your dumbbell rows because you embrace your hand and your foot. But there's one other variation you can try which you might enjoy a bit more. You might actually get a better connection in your back, but you can try it. And also, like I said, if you're training for 20 years, you're going to want to try different variations. So having a few more variations and the ability to swap your exercises without swapping the movement is actually good. So we're going into a chest supported row. This is the same premise. You have a lat bias variation and an upper back bias variation. Taking the bench, you're going to put it on one of an incline, roughly. This all depends how long your arms are. If you're 7 foot tall, your arms are going to be touching the floor on this, but I only have wee short arms, so I'm okay. I'm going to put my dumbbells here. So from here with my chest support rows, I'm thinking of driving my elbows towards my pocket. I want to bias my lats here rather than my upper back taking over the lift. That's why you want this angle, because the flatter your back is, the better. Ideally, we would have this bench completely flat and the bench be elevated, something like a seal row, but I don't have that equipment. So I'm going slight incline and then driving the elbows back, keeping the elbows nice and tucked. So starting here, chest on the bench, keep the elbows nice and low, drive the elbows back. Just one thing you don't want to do with your chest support rows is you don't want to excessively lift your chest off the bench. Then we're using a bit of momentum and our lower back is coming into play a bit more. There's nothing wrong with training your lower back, you probably should, but we're not doing it here. Then our other variation is going to be slightly more of an incline. So we're going to lift it up one more. And this is going to be more upper back because we're going to get a bit more shrugging. We're going to get a bit more of a squeeze between the shoulder blades, driving our elbows out slightly wider. Drive the elbows out. We've done a slightly less of an incline chest support row to target the lats by keeping them in. We've been slightly more incline for getting a bit more shrugging, but there is also one other variation. I just didn't want to put the two of them back to back, as this might be a bit confusing. So back to the original height, and this is more upper back now. All we're thinking of doing, driving those elbows nice and high, squeezing the shoulder blades together. So we're here, rather than being down here. The other thing that might actually be useful, if you're ever kneeling on a bench for your rows, I should have done it in that last exercise, was put the bottom pad up. You don't really need it for these, but I just wanted to show that if you drive your knees in, it makes it a lot easier because you're not going to feel like you're sliding down the bench, but we actually don't need it for this one. Elbows high, Aim to get a full stretch on the way down. Drive the elbows up. Keep the chest on the bench. In all honesty, because I use those for the lat bias rows, they're actually far too heavy for the upper back rows. Your upper back rows, you probably won't be able to do as much. So like I was using these for the lat bias rows, they're too heavy, so I need to go a wee bit lighter because I want to get that elbow back, get a good squeeze. When you're doing your upper back rows, one mistake you don't want to make is you don't want to let your elbows drop as you get tired. So you don't want to start up here and then let your elbows end up down here, because as you get tired, your elbows are going to drop a wee bit. So you just need to make sure you keep your elbows nice and high, depending on what variation you're trying to do. There's one thing that will help take your dumbbell rows and all your back exercise to the next level in terms of the amount of weight you can lift, the intensity you can bring in a set, and how many reps you can do. And it's really simply, it's just using a pair of lifting straps. Lifting straps will help because your grip will probably be the limiting factor. We don't want our grip to be the limiting factor. Yes, you do want to have strong grip, but we always want the muscle we're training to be the limiting factor of an exercise. I don't want to feel in dumbbell row because my grips give out. I want to feel because my back can't do any more work. You want the limiting factor of an exercise to be the muscle you're training. That would be like someone losing an F1 race, not because of the driver, not because of the car, but because they ran out of fuel. So if you want to take your training to the next level, use a pair of lifting straps. They'll allow you to lift so much heavier. All straps are going to be slightly different. For these, they're actually a wee bit different than others. All you have to do is loop them round and then put your hand through and then grab the dumbbell. Other ones you might just have to loop them up. Right guys, that brings the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and now I hope you know a bit more about dumbbell rows, the variations, common mistakes, and also how to do chest supported dumbbell rows. If you want more videos like this, just subscribe to the channel. Cheers.